weekend of hoops in the Big Ten. 4 games tomorrow, including Michigan and Michigan State in East Lansing. We have Illinois, Northwestern, and Rutgers, Nebraska here on the network. Sunday features a huge one in West Lafayette as Ohio State visits Purdue, plus Wisconsin hosting Minnesota here on the Big Ten Network. Let's start with Michigan and Michigan State. Joshua, you know a thing or two about this rivalry.
Just a little.
You also know a thing or two about Tom Izzo. His team has lost 2 of 3 losses to Northwestern and Illinois. You're going into a rivalry game. Give us a little insight into what practice with Tom Izzo might be like at a time like this.
It's almost like what you see is what you get. What you see on TV,
yeah,
that's what it's like in practice. We try to Michigan State, they try to make sure to not really allow outside sources to dictate the mentality. But when you talk about Michigan and coming in and playing against them, and then also the loss that they came off of, practice is going to be intense, especially when, you lose because of, things that you can control. You think about what happened against Illinois. Coach Iz talked about effort and turnovers. Well, effort really being a really big thing that he's concerned about and that he really coaches and preaches all the time. So practice is going to be crazy.
What does a crazy practice look like? I mean, we've all seen the video of the football pads out, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the most notorious, maybe, of the physical Michigan State practices. Like, should we expect that this week when you're coaching effort, when you're critical of effort? What does he do to try to get more effort out of guys?
Well, we have this thing called WAR. WAR is basically a rebounding drill. That's what they used to do with the football pads. We never, thank God, I never had.
You never put them on.
I never put them on.
Okay.
But we got threatened a lot of times. We got threatened a lot of times. But when they feel like it's an effort related thing or effort related problem, do a lot of roar.
So what's WAR?
WAR is basically a rebounding drill where you have to box out and you have to make sure that the person that you're boxing out doesn't get the ball. And if they do get the ball, you have to go back and box them out again. And so if the offense continues to get the rebound, well, you're going to continue to be the defense until you get the rebound. And everybody's yelling. Everybody's like, one guy that's really loud is Michael Garland. We call him OG.
Yeah.
He's just going crazy. So, it's going to be intense.
How is this week different even in the best of times in East Lansing? Like, let's take it to a time when you guys had it rocking and rolling and you were a part of a lot of those teams. When Michigan's on the schedule, how's it different?
It's just a different feel. I mean, it's not even just in the basketball, within the basketball team. It's in the offices. It's not just within the basketball offices. It's in the basketball. It's in the Breslin Center. It's not just in the Breslin Center. It's the whole campus. It's a different feel. It's a different energy that Michigan State gets when they're getting ready to play Michigan. And, I go back to my sophomore year when we pretty much was #1 a lot of that year. And so, like you said, what was it like when I was on the team that was really rolling? And, it was crazy then. And just being able to be a part of a rivalry like that, that's something that you would just always cherish as a player.
What do you see when you watch this Michigan team? They are clearly playing better. They've won 3 straight games. Those games have come against kind of the middle and the bottom of the Big Ten. The win at Indiana is a really good win. They outlasted Northwestern at home. We certainly know Northwestern is better than its record. But they haven't beat Maryland too.
Right.
But again, it hasn't been against an elite team. It hasn't been against a Michigan State team yet. But what are you seeing? Why do you think they're playing better?
I think first thing is Houston. I think he's really been playing well for them. I think he's somebody that we kind of thought that he was going to play well from the get-go. But, as a freshman, it just takes time. You have to really get a feel. And by this time, usually what Coach Iz would always talk about is that, by this time within the season, you're stepping out of the freshman role and you're becoming more of a sophomore because you have more experience, you have more maturity. And so, I think he's been doing really well, and I think, he has the potential to continue to be an X factor for them. And then, you look at when they played against Northwestern, when Dickinson went out with the foul trouble, guys really kind of, they banded together and really began to show that it's more to them than just Hunter Dickinson. I think it's very important that they continue to win by committee and not just through him.
What about Ohio State and Purdue? It's the only meeting of the year. What part of that matchup are you most excited to watch?
I think I'm concerned. We're not really concerned, but what I'm looking for Ohio State is, can they take the rebounding effort that they had against Minnesota and bring it into this Purdue game? Because obviously it's going to be a war in the paint. And I think the team that really wins the paint war is the team that's going to win. So that's something that I'll be looking for within this game.
They are smaller in the post.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's smaller in the post than Zach Edey. But they do have a lot of bodies. And we talked about Kyle Young played really well last night. And you've got Zed Key and you have E.J. Liddell. I mean, you have a lot of guys that you can rotate through there. What do you see as kind of the secret to guarding Purdue? Is it rotating bodies? Is it having one guy who can not look Zach Edey in the eye, but at least look above his shoulder? I mean, kind of what's the formula, in your opinion, for dealing with not just Edey, but also Travion Williams? Well,
I don't know if it's an exact formula because all teams are so different. You know, you have Ohio State, like you said, they're not as big, you know, when we talk about their bigs. And so it's all just based upon the identity and the dynamic of the team. You know, I think for Ohio State, what's really going to benefit them is if they do double, will their guards be there to rotate and be ready to be on the weak side? Because, you know, one of the biggest struggles that teams have when they double them is they don't always do the things outside of just that double. What I mean by that is the guards, they have to be in the right position. They have to know how to rotate and when to be in the right place at the right time. It's not just doubling Edey, but it's also making sure that you're on the backside, because you look at Edey and he didn't really play as much as last night because of foul trouble, but he was able to really make plays and pass out to Sasha and all those different guys. So when you double, you have to make sure that you guard the three as well.
I think that's really the challenge for everyone of guarding Purdue, right? Is that they are a pick your poison team, and there's really not a great solution. I mean, when they're shooting the ball like they did last night, I mean, what do you do? I mean, I think at a certain point you throw up your hands and say, man, they're just really good. There's a reason they're first in the nation in offensive efficiency, right? So how would you game plan against them? Like, what would you look to take away, whether you're Ohio State or you're Michigan State or whoever you are?
Well, I think offensively, I would try to get Edey in foul trouble. I would pull him out, put him in the ball screen, and make him move. If you watched the game last night, Iowa was at their best when they pulled him out of the paint and really was attacking him. And that's when he got fouls, you know, Keegan Murray, Chris Murray really attacking him. And so I think you have to pull Edey outside of the paint when it comes to offense. And then defense, I would double, but I would just make sure that, like I said before, just make sure I'm focusing on the rotations and really push the pace, get them going, make them try to play fast, and don't really play within their identity, because, you know, teams lose a lot of times when they step out of who they are and step into that other team and who they are. And so that's kind of what I would do. I mean, like you said, it's really tough because
it's not easy,
have to pick your poison,
Right? Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being in charge of putting together that game plan. But we have seen some teams deal with them well. Rutgers dealt with them really well on the inside. So it can be done, but it is easier said than done. All right, more from Joshua coming up. We'll preview the rest of the weekend. Pucks, part of a loaded weekend on the network. Saturday, 4th-ranked Michigan facing off with Wisconsin. All starts at 9 Eastern on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Paul Caponigri will be on the call on that one. We'll talk about it in a bit. But Paul, when you joined us at the beginning of last week, we were talking about the U.S. Olympic selections that come out, and there were 8 players from the Big Ten who were chosen. And then we were talking about the possibility of the Canadian selections coming out, that the Big Ten would potentially lose some more players there. Owen Power, Kent Johnson, both selected for Michigan. So Michigan is somewhat decimated here. I mean, it's a great thing for your program, right, in terms of publicity.
Sure.
It's wonderful for the
selling
players.
Point, all that good stuff.
All that stuff's incredible.
Yes.
But in the here and now,
right.
It's really challenging. What does this mean for the Wolverines?
Well, yeah, especially they're battling first place right now with Ohio State. You know, if any team right now with their depth could handle it, you know, I think they're the ones, especially on defense. Owen Power is, I think he's the best player in college hockey, could win the Hobie Baker. But they have a depth at defense. You know, you're not going to have the same electricity of a player as him, but they can handle it, I think. They have a weekend off in there. Michigan doesn't play next weekend, so that's a little bit of a break for them. But Michigan losing 4 guys, Ken Johnson's not officially on the team yet, but he's with them and traveling, and I think he should be on the team. I think he's one of the players who should play, but he's kind of an alternate right now for Canada, but they're already in Switzerland getting ready. They're having like a mini training camp. So regardless, he's gone. He's gone, but there's maybe a chance that if he doesn't, he might come back early. That's still, a long way. But yeah, I think they're a team that can handle it. But they're going to face obstacles and good teams that are chasing them, and it could cost them the Big Ten regular season.
Well, speaking of that regular season race, so they find themselves tied atop the league with Ohio State.
Right.
How surprised are you by the Buckeyes and how good they've been?
I'm not as surprised as a lot of people did. They were picked to finish last by the media and the coaches. Head coach Jeff Jackson, Notre Dame, said he didn't pick them last. And I didn't do an official picking. I kind of just was like, I think this team right now is the middle of the pack, but they had some question marks. They have a lot of freshmen. And in any sport, they had high hopes, but you never know how good those guys have been, and they've been really good.
Yeah, let's get into some of these freshmen. I mean, you look through their top scorers, and it's freshmen at the very top. Yeah, both in scoring and assists. Goalie, a phenomenal freshman goalie.
Right.
So have these guys exceeded expectations? Have they just? We're looking at them right now.
Honestly, I think every coach hopes you're like, okay, we're bringing these guys in. We hope they contribute.
Yeah.
And I think the one guy in the middle, Mason Lohrei, on defense had a little higher. He looked like a blue chip prospect, and you're getting exactly what you expect from him. But I think in net, that was the biggest question. They lost Tommy Napier, who was a terrific all Big Ten goalie. Well, Jakub Dobiš is leading the Big Ten in every big category. Save percentage, goals against average, and he's played the most minutes. You can't predict that before a season. I don't care how big of a blue chip guy he is coming in. So those are just big things. And then Georgi Merkulov has scored the most goals of any freshman in the country. So you're not just getting good contributions from those guys.
Right.
You're getting great contributions. And then they've had a few guys in the transfer portal too to elevate the game too. So you can't predict it. Everyone tries to predict it. That's why their predictions in the preseason. But that's the main reason the Buckeyes are at the top.
Yeah, when a team is chosen last and may end up first, it shows you.
There's got to be some surprises.
It's challenging. Again, they've been great. They've won 9 of 11. They swept Michigan State last weekend. They go to Penn State this weekend. How good a chance do you give them, particularly given the fact that Michigan is going to be a little short-handed here?
Michigan and Minnesota. Yeah. And both, if the schedules stay the same, Ohio State will play Minnesota and Michigan without having those players. I mean, Ohio State will play Michigan in their final regular season games, and that would be the last weekend Michigan guys would win or would miss if they all stay over there. They've got the opportunity right in front of you. Head coach Steve Rock would never say that. Obviously, no coach would. But the opportunity is there. It's jammed up at the top. You got Notre Dame and Minnesota as well. So they're all vying for that spot. But Ohio State's got a really good chance.
It's been a few years since they've won the regular season in the Big Ten. You mentioned Minnesota. They go to South Bend this weekend. The recent history is really tight games.
And why wouldn't you expect it? Two great programs. Head coach Bob Mosko said this week, almost all their games have been one goal. The big thing, I think, Notre Dame has really got good goaltending, and Minnesota did have really good goaltending. Right now, that's just a huge question mark, and it's nothing against Justin Close, who's had to step in. We talked about Jack LaFontaine leaving a couple weeks ago to go to the NHL just out of nowhere. No blame to him for doing that, but it leaves that question. And of those 4 teams that are vying for the Big Ten, they're really the only one that has a question mark now. And net, could Justin Close be the answer? He could, but last weekend against Michigan, they outshot them 2-1, about 40-20 in Saturday's game, but Michigan won 4-1. Not so much that Justin Close was bad, but Eric Portillo for Michigan was good, so he won that goalie competition, and that's what could be something deciding it at the end.
Nothing new there. He has been fabulous in that for Michigan. But, interesting to think about how different a team Minnesota is than they were.
Sure.
The last time they met Notre Dame, Gopher swept them in Minneapolis in October. Saturday on the Big Ten Network, that Michigan team we were talking about in Portillo taking on Wisconsin. It has been a rough year for the Badgers. As I said, you're going to be on the call for this one. There are a lot of explanations as to why. And yet, home ice, what will it take for Wisconsin to make a game of this?
Yeah, they've been better at home. They just swept Michigan State 2 weeks ago. They lost what Michigan has now. They lost Cole Caulfield, Dylan Holloway, Weisbach. They lost all their scoring, and they weren't able to bring in a lot. Those guys were all freshmen and sophomore mostly, a couple seniors, but maybe expected possibly some to come back. So they're doing it a different way this year. Defense and goaltending, it hasn't worked out, but they have to play a really disciplined game. They try keep it low scoring. I think they can do that against Michigan. They're going to have the Badger crowd behind them. I think they're having a whiteout. I think it might be Saturday's game. I'm not sure. So the Kohl Center will be rocking. I think they've been better. They just can't let Michigan's explosive offense get going.
And they did win 1 or 2 when they played in Ann Arbor.
They did, and that was a big surprise early on because at that time, Wisconsin was really struggling. They've gotten better as the season gone on. They're young guys, just like in any sport, the young guys are getting better, more comfortable in there. So it's going to be a tough weekend for Michigan. They won't have Power and Johnson, but they will still have Brisson and Beniers. They leave after this weekend to join USA.
Looking forward to the call. Enjoy yourself. If you don't enjoy yourself in Madison, there's something wrong with you.
I'll be with Chris Vosters. He's a Badger. He already told me he's going to take me to some restaurant or something. So I'm blaming it all on him. I love going there. It's fun, and it's great atmosphere at the Kohl Center.
Cannot go wrong. Looking forward to hearing the call on Saturday.
When you stepped on the mat with Tom and Terry Brands, it was costly. It was not a game. It was real. And it was win at all costs. Go out there and make them pay.
If you were going to beat them, you were going to have to be great.
There's a fine line between over the top and walking the line.
Get him a pillow!
At times, they cross over a little bit.
I'm not going to apologize for winning. I won't.
The big story, the Brands brothers debuts tonight following the wrestling showdown between number 1 Penn State and number 2 Iowa. It should be great as we take a look at this night. We've been pointing to for weeks here on the Big Ten Network. An unbelievable wrestling doubleheader. Begins with Minnesota and Michigan. Then it is that highly anticipated 1 versus 2 showdown between Penn State and Iowa. Coverage starts with a special pregame show, 6:30 Eastern tonight on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Shane Sparks is going to be in Iowa City for tonight's showdown. In fact, he's already there, and he joins us now live. And Shane, let's dive into this. We're going to get into the specifics and the details of some of the matches. But first, just give people a sense who maybe aren't wrestling people but are saying, wow, 1 versus 2, how big a deal is that? How big a deal is it?
This is a huge day. It's a great night of wrestling here on the Big Ten Network with the 2 duels and, of course, the Brands Brothers documentary. I would simply say this, Dave. If you are not a wrestling fan, tune into the Big Ten Network tonight and you'll become a wrestling fan. Something's got to give tonight. I talked about it earlier. You have 10 weight classes. This is a 10-course meal, and every course is a dessert. To give you some kind of perspective on this matchup, Penn State has won 24 consecutive dual meets. Iowa has won 29 consecutive dual meets, 28 in the Big Ten. They did not wrestle last year because of COVID. The last big match they had was in 2020. It was end of January here in Iowa City, 1917. The Hawkeyes won it. The place went crazy. This atmosphere inside Carver Hawkeye Arena on a night like tonight, it is nearly impossible to beat. People are licking their chops. It is going to be an awesome, raucous environment in Iowa City. I can't wait. Can't wait.
I can tell. It's just, first of all, I've been sold out for 2 months. Again, just to give people a sense of how big this is. Sold out for 2 months. I went on one of those resale ticket sites this morning to see if you can get tickets. It's $60 a seat for the worst seats in the house. For resale, there are many of them that were going for 3 figures per ticket. So, again, it gives you a sense for the excitement. Help me understand how big a deal is being at home in wrestling. I mean, I don't think of it as being a big deal, right? I mean, it's the same mats everywhere, but what's the difference? How much can that help Iowa?
It can help Iowa a lot. Carver Hawkeye Arena, Bryce Jordan Center, Penn State, Schottenstein Center, when they sell that out at Ohio State, those are venues to come to mind. In my opinion, nothing is tougher than coming into Carver Hawkeye with this Iowa fan base and finding a way to get it done. Jim Gibbons told me once, it was very interesting to me. He coached at Iowa State, and he said when he would bring his Cyclones into Carver Hawkeye, oftentimes the guys that wrestled on that back half, he would not bring them into the arena because the tension, the pressure, and the anxiety would wear them down by the time they wrestled. So this is about as tough of an environment as you can come into in college wrestling. It is a tough place to win. You got 15,000 people going absolutely crazy for 2.5 hours.
Well, they've won 22 straight duels there. Iowa has their longest streak in more than a decade. Let's dive into some of these matches. You have two weight classes where it is the number one wrestler in the country against the number two wrestler in the country, starting with 141, Nick Lee of Penn State and Jaden Ironman of Iowa. Get us ready for that one. What should we watch?
So to set the table in this match, they first wrestled at the 2018 national tournament, and Ironman major decisioned Nick Lee. Now, last year they met in the Big Ten final. Ironman beat him 6-5. He got a riding time point. And then 2 weeks later at the national tournament, Nick Lee beats him 4-2 with a takedown and sudden victory. Nick Lee's got a great wrestling IQ. Penn State has shown over the years they make great adjustments, and it was a perfect game plan from Nick Lee. Jaden Ironman is very dangerous. They call him the Riddler. Gets a lot of pins. I compare him to a baseball player. You miss fastball location by 1 inch on Jaden Ironman, he'll hit it 450 feet. This will be a really good matchup. Again, there's a history. I'm curious to see how they wrestle. You're going to take a lot of chances, a little bit more conservative, but it's going to be a great match. It's one of several toss-up matchups tonight.
All right, so that is a rematch of a national championship match. I mean, again, just to give people a sense, this is a regular season dual meet. That's a rematch of the two best wrestlers in the country at their weight class a year ago. And then you have another one at 174, Carter Starachi and Michael Kemmer. What should we expect here?
This is the matchup I'm looking forward to the most. Michael Kemmer has one loss inside Carver Hawkeye Arena. That came in January of 2017. He hasn't lost in this arena in over 5 years. Very similar situation to what we just discussed at 141. These guys wrestled in the Big Ten final, and Kemmer really controlled the match. End of the second period, had a 4-point flurry, 2 takedown, 2 near fall, was able to widen the gap, and then Starachi comes back 2 weeks later, much like Nick Lee did, and he beat Michael Kemmer in sudden victory 3-1 with a perfectly timed double leg. With this matchup, these guys are both just really, really gritty. They maintain really good position. One thing with Carter Starachi that really impresses me is his ability to continue fighting in really tough positions, gives himself a chance to win it. But a lot has changed, I'm sure, in the last year with Starachi. I'm sure he's gotten a lot better inside that Penn State room for a full year. This will be a big-time match. Michael Kemmer, in that win in 2020, beat Mark Hall of Penn State, a national champion, to give Iowa the win 1917. That was a huge match in that duel. So once again, Dave, another hard-fought battle tonight at 174. The crowd will be amped for this one. And
Kemmer's won 42 straight dual match appearances. So, again, I mean, this is all these, something's got to give, right? But, I mean, it is just amazing how good all these guys are. Let's go to 133. It's not 1 versus 2. It's 1 versus 3 in the country. You've got Roman Bravo Young, who is number 1. Austin DeSanto of Iowa is number 3. What should we expect in that one?
Fireworks. These are two guys that like to score a lot of points. This is a rematch, Dave, of the Big Ten final. When these two first met, it was Roman Bravo Young's true freshman year. Austin DeSanto won both those encounters. But since then, Roman Bravo Young has won 3 straight against the Hawkeye, but they're always really good battles. Austin DeSanto, believe I read the stats, that he has scored 20 points or more in 26 career matches. This guy brings intensity, runs on high-octane jet fuel. You talk about paces in all of college wrestling. Austin DeSanto ranks up there with the best of them as far as high pace. But Roman Bravo Young, he's gotten so much better as well. He's very good on his feet, great footwork, very slick, but he's really come around on top these last couple of years. That'll be a really tough match for the Hawkeyes to get. But one, if you're Roman Bravo Young, and he's well aware of this, he knows he's in for a battle tonight. You better bring your A game tonight, Dave. Every one of these guys towing the line, tonight is not the night to bring your B-plus game because it won't be good enough. You got to toe the line and expect to win. And one of my favorite Terry Brands quotes years back, when you have two guys that toe the line and expect to win, that is when you have yourself a dogfight, and we'll have 10 of them tonight.
All right, so in those 10 dogfights, it does seem like most of the pundits out there seem to give a slight edge to Penn State coming in. You talked about what a huge advantage, though, it is for Iowa to be at home, kind of in the big picture here of actually winning the meet as a team. What do you see? Who's the favorite?
Dave, yesterday I was taking my soon-to-be 11-year-old daughter to school. We went through every weight. She doesn't know anything about college wrestling. Her picks might be more accurate than mine would be because this can go in so many different ways. I mean, you got 5 or 6 matches that truly, they're toss-up matches. There's a few matches where each team is a clear favorite, but you got a handful of these matchups. These 1 versus 2, heavyweights got a really great matchup. There are 5 matchups, Dave, tonight that pit guys that are both ranked in the top 5. High-level wrestling. It's going to come down to those little things. An escape in the final 10 seconds, a ride out, maybe a critical mat return, short time takedown. You really can't predict how this thing is going to shake out. It could go several different ways. I really don't know. I mean, I understand why somebody would say, yeah, favorite Penn State. They got 4 returning national champions. You can make a case for both sides on this duel.
I would give a lot of money to have a recording of that carpool, of you driving your daughter to school. I think that would have been very, very entertaining. So next time you should record that and put it out, maybe on the Twitterverse or something. I do want to ask you really quickly about this Brands Brothers documentary. We keep seeing the excerpts of it. I mean, it just looks awesome. The level of intensity of these guys. Anybody who knows anything about the Big Ten knows just how intense the two of them are. What should fans look forward to tonight?
It is fantastic. I was able to watch it a couple of days ago, and I was at the edge of my seat for every minute. When it was over, I wanted more. They did a great job, showing you some of their upbringing. One of my favorite scenes is when they go back to their old high school, and they just talk about their experience in wrestling. Their mom, Bonnie's on there. You hear her perspective. It's just really, really well done. I've always been big fans of these guys. The very first NCAA tournament that I ever watched on TV was 1991. I had missed the first match, which was 118 pounds. The next 2 matches I saw, 126 and 134, Terry and Tom Brands, and I've been a big fan of their wrestling style ever since. These guys were highly entertaining, had a wrestling style, and they continue to preach this. It's not just beating somebody, it's how you beat them. You want to dominate them every second inside that circle. This documentary is fantastic. Well done.
Well, Shane, you have dominated this segment of television, and it has been fun to be a part of it. You're the best. Thank you so much. Cannot wait to hear you on this call tonight.
Thanks so much, Dave. Take care.
All right, you do this.